All right, episode 2, Lead with Empower podcast is back. We have Dan Jaskot, Zack Morello, GM, assistant GM with Empower Leadership. Zack, what's cooking? How's everything going?
Going well. I'm getting to get a lot of work done, and these podcasts are really making me step up my game. So
yeah, love it.
Well, yeah,
love it. Cool. Well, hey, before we get into the episode, got to give a shout out. One of our clients, Tolland High School boys soccer, just completed a championship run for I believe it's the Central Connecticut Conference, the CCC, which is the conference that they play in. Mm-hmm. Just won the championship last night for their league.
Yeah.
And Coach Kokomo, who I've been working with now for like 5 years, maybe right around 4 or 5 years, was his first time beating as the head coach, first time beating Hall High School, and they won in penalty kicks. So it went draw during regular time, and then they won 4-2 in penalty kicks. So I bring it up. One, it's awesome that they won their conference title. The boys are psyched. Saw some great video footage on social media today. But last year's team won the state championship, and one of the things I worked with the current captains of the program in the spring, in the summer, and then with the entire team in August, and they are gunning for the repeat. They are out big game hunting right now for repeat action. So Coach Kokomo, Tolland High School, boys soccer, crush it. Keep it rolling, baby.
Yeah, I'll put like a little blurb in for them too. That's awesome because it's rarer that you see, I don't want to say direct results, but that you see groups of people succeed like later on in their season or in their job or school or whatever, and they keep up ties with what they're doing, and you want to think that you're a small part of their success, and instead of just getting the program and then leaving and never seeing them again, it's cool to have that relationship with Empower.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, and I love working with Coach. Coach Kokomo's freaking absolutely rock solid. He's on a short list of coaches that we've worked with over the years that, obviously there's the pressure of coaching the sport and coaching the athletes up and being competitive. But, I think with Coach Kokomo, there's value beyond soccer. Like he coaches his athletes. So yes, he wants the team and the individuals to be the best high school athletes that they can be in that 4-year window that they have. But he's really pushing these guys to be great beyond soccer. And, it's great. It's always inspiring and great to work with him because of that. I think there's a bigger picture vision there than just like, hey, let's compete this 3 months of a high school season,
Yeah, and I mean, this could be a whole podcast where you could talk about, as a coach, you understand that it isn't just about soccer. I don't care what level you're at, from preschool to pro. I'm sure that a lot of what they do and what they ingrain on the field is 90% off the field. And that's why they led to a championship. That's why they went to a W. So it's cool to know that people are out there, coaches are out there, instilling those kind of values into the athletes. I've been watching a lot of coaching type stuff lately. Specifically, I don't know if you heard of Ted Lasso, the show.
No, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know the program. Never seen it.
Oh man, I mean, I don't want to get off topic, but like he goes into it really quick. He goes into it into soccer or to football because he's not in America, not knowing a thing about the sport. Not knowing a darn thing, not one rule, not one regulation, nothing, not about teams, nothing. But he is a real coach of coaching the players as a team and as human beings. And of course, there's a whole seasons of the progression of their relationship. But you get to see the players evolve, not as just as soccer players, but as people. And it's because of, the values that he ingrained in them.
Yep. No, I love it. And Coach C is a big culture guy. And, it's something I had the pleasure of working with him and his 4 captains throughout the off season to really, they had a lot of turnover after last year's championship team, and some really, really strong leaders as captains, which it is a double-edged sword, right? Having such strong leaders last season allowed kind of the car to be driven by those 3 or 4 guys. And then this year he had 4 guys that were kind of brand new to being in a leadership position. And one of the big pushes this offseason was not resting on your laurels and really tightening up the culture so that they can maximize, the season that they're in right now. Knock on wood, coach, keep it rolling. Sounds like they're doing just that. And we'll be following along on your state tournament run with hopes of raising another trophy and hanging another banner, in a couple of weeks. So, yep, shout out Tolland soccer, baby, go get it.
That's great. So, topic for
So
today.
it's funny, we bring up like we work obviously with different types of groups, and we bring up a high school sports team. Wasn't on our agenda list, but I thought it would be relevant here. And it's funny because, and I know you've started to experience this as well. But we're on the phone with a potential client, right? Potential partner. And one of the first questions that we receive is, tell us about these types of activities, and like, how physical are they? And like, our group isn't too keen on like running around too much and all that type of stuff. And it's a kind of a cool segue for our topic for this episode of the podcast is our different kind of experiences for the different group types that we work with. So have you had any of those types of conversations, Zach, since you kind of started to get your footing in like the sales process, and I guess bring up some thoughts, concepts that come to your head from some of those past conversations?
Yeah, I mean, I've had conversations with potential like brand new start from scratch clients, and like you said, those questions come up like, what are we doing? Like what is this? So a lot of people are calling not really knowing what we are, which give them some credit, like just to put themselves out there. But they call in just to get some more information, and obviously after some experience at different kinds of programs, I'm able to kind of veer the conversation of how we can help. And my reverse question to them, or question back before I answer theirs, is what do you want out of the like what do you want for your group? What kind of outcomes are most ideal for you? And like we said in the last podcast, like we can use one activity for 6 different reasons. But it is a speed bump that we have to get past of like, yes, these things might seem like just games, and they are, but the way we do them, the way we facilitate them and organize them, we don't use them as games. It's probably 30% of what we actually use them for. So that conversation always is like, okay, I want to word vomit like everything about Empower without trying to overwhelm them of like, whoa, like what's happening. So we take it slow. We're like, okay, let me ask you some questions first. What do you want out of the program? And that way that we can really explain what Empower does.
Yep. No, that's great. And for this episode here today, we're going to talk a little bit about what facilitation actually is.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk a little bit about, not necessarily getting into the specific different types of groups that we work with, but at a higher level, 3, I guess for a lack of a better term, 3 different like program styles that we offer for groups. And for those of you that hang on for the whole episode towards the end, we are going to share some information about a very simple activity that can be replicated just about anywhere with any group type in any setting, and talk through some ideas for you, the listener, should you want to implement said activity. So stick around for the episode, but facilitation. Let's get, so right out of the gate, the word facilitation's come up, I think 3 or 4 times already. One of us has said it a couple times. And, I think someone who has not experienced, a team building event might have that quote, like, what is facilitation? Like, how is it different from teaching, leading, whatever it might be? So, not going to spend too much time on it, but for those of you listening, facilitation is essentially a process of guiding a group through some sort of experience. And we will have an episode a little bit down the road that gets into a little bit more detail with regards to like how much information should be given to groups or not given to groups in specific settings, and depending on the group type and their desired outcomes. But for kind of simplicity's sake, facilitation is essentially this process of guiding a group from start to finish in some sort of experience. So anytime you hear Zach or I bring up the F word, facilitation, that's what we're referring to.
Yeah, and like I can elaborate a little bit, like a little bit deeper into it. With I didn't know facilitation with Empower specifically of what we do, like it comes with experience. So even with me 9, 10 months into the job, like I'm still just touching the surface of facilitating. I'm going beyond of just going to a group saying, here are the rules, here's the equipment, don't get hurt, get through it. Like it's way more than that. A baby can figure that out and teach anybody. And I think that's what's cool about Empower too, is that a lot of people can look up team building activities as a manager or boss or home or coach, team building activities, and go to their group and be like, all right guys or girls, we're doing this today. Let's figure out this puzzle. Let's figure out this game. Let's or whatever that they come up with. And that's great. I think that's an awesome step to take. But what we do from Empower is so much deeper than that.
Yeah, and I think it comes from this idea of experiential learning, right? I think that the art of facilitation is less about narrowing the path so much that it's a no-brainer. Like, this is what we need to do, this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to find success within 5 minutes, 10 minutes. The idea of facilitation is having these wider parameters, right? Where there's still, hey, what are we trying to accomplish, what rules do we have to play by? But then there's this idea of exploration for the participants. Like, we're not giving them the paint by numbers instructions for how to get from A to B. Again, going back to facilitation, it's all about guiding. So it's kind of presenting that initial bit of information, providing whatever the parameters are, the framework is that you want the group to work within, or the group wants to work within, and then reading the room. And we've talked a lot about like getting the water to boil without it boiling over. So like, finding that time to stand back, observe, maybe let the group experience some struggle, frustration, and even some conflict, but then kind of keeping your thumb on the pulse of what's happening, so that, hey, we know when to step in. And again, some mini debriefing tools that we'll get into down the road in future episodes. Like, instead of us telling them what they need to do to find success, can we ask the right set of questions to get them to reflect upon initial experience, identify why what's happening is happening, and then try to make some sort of positive change to make progress towards completing the task or the challenge.
Yep, that is 100% right. And one of the first things that I learned, not just watching your programs, but facilitating my own, of the great word for what you said is read the room. And that 1000% comes with experience. You have to do 100, 200, 300 different programs to really understand how to do that. We have, again, another podcast, but we can get into detail about if they're moving too quickly, if they're trying in the wrong direction, if their head is only in the puzzle and not why they're doing it. So we can talk about that another time. But I will say the last thing is, and this we can get into detail about, is one of the first times is you had me participate in a couple of the programs, and that really got me, because I'm a hands-on person, that really got me understanding, like, oh, this is the frustration that the teams are having, or this is what I have to overcome to get to my goal. And me, like, literally a part of that activity and not any part of facilitating got me like, okay, this is kind of cool.
Yep. And that's you. And I think you just said it, like, you having that physical hands-on experience is what really unlocked like the door and unlocked this understanding, or this level of understanding that wasn't there previous. And the same could be said to our for our participants, right? If we're there just spoon feeding them answer after answer after answer and essentially doing the challenge for them, yes, there's glory in task completion, but I would argue that there would be not much learning taking place in
Yeah, well, of
that.
course. And like you said, task completion. There's no monetary physical reward that you get from getting these activities done. It's
Correct.
getting them done with your team, getting them done with yourself, leading yourself into it. That's the reward, and that's why we're not helping you here or helping you in that way. Where I mean, like again, one of our things is in plain sight. You're finding a 10-cent little black pen, and
Inflation, it's up to like 50 cents now, you know what I mean?
okay.
But
So 50 cent, we got to get that pen back. But yeah, that's the reward is as a 50 cent looking for a 50 cent pen, but like the process to get there is really the reward.
yep, yep, no, 100%. And going back and this is really going to be the meat of our little conversation today, but you know, you talked about that initial conversation that you've had the pleasure of experiencing with clients or potential clients. I've definitely had a bunch of those over the years as well. And you know, almost to backtrack a little bit, when you look at um you know their goals for the program and like what the client wants to take away from a potential experience with us, and there's almost a step before that, and that's kind of gaining an understanding about, you know, who the group is,
Hmm.
right? So you know, for us, typically we will lump our programmatic group types into four buckets. So we have adult, we'll have youth, we'll have college, university, and then we'll have sport teams, athletes. Um, and then, you know, it doesn't take much peeling of the layers to realize, hey, within the adult group, there's all sorts of different types of kind of subcategories under that or within that bucket. And the same can be said for youth, college, university, and your athletic teams. You know, even this summer, you know, we did, I think, in the span of maybe 2 weeks, 4 or 5 different sports leadership programs, and one of them was with a bunch of high school student leaders that were representing the Southwest Conference here in Connecticut. I think, you know, there was like 14 or 16 schools, each sending 10 student leaders from their that are obviously involved in athletics
Hmm.
for this full day workshop. You worked with the Tolland High School girls soccer program. I worked with the boys soccer program. We had a great program with Amherst Leads, which is a leadership enrichment program up at Amherst College for all their student athletes. So just within that simple category of sports, you know, in a 2 week span, we saw about 4 or 5 different kind of style of programs within that. And, you know, kind of um, looking at those different group types, when we have those conversations with clients, that's the most important information we can garner from that conversation is um, who is the group, how um, how well do they know each other, what is their day-to-day functioning look like, sound like, feel like, what are some of the strengths that they have, what are some of the challenges that they face, and then kind of working our way towards, hey, what do you want them to get out of this experience? um, and all that information that will earn, I guess, over the course of that conversation is what really allows us to truly put together something that is customized for that group, for those outcomes, for whatever they're going through in a you know, in that point in time, I guess, in their livelihood, whether that's at work, home, school, on an athletic field, whatever it might be.
Yep, and I like you said, customized because I've said it a couple times already. Now we could take one activity, and it's going to be you could use the one activity for elementary to corporate adults, and that's great. But we do pick out the activity themselves depending on what that group is. So, like you
Yeah.
said, a group of leaders to a group of new athletes to a group whatever it might be. It's not like we're going to take one activity like this is it, this is the one that we're always going to use for everybody. That's crazy. So we do tailor the activity to that group depending on what their outcome wants.
Yep. Yep. And then, you know, one of the things that we, you know, you and I have talked about quite a bit, we try to bring into our programming is not only putting together like a sequence of activities that's group appropriate, that meets their desired level of physical, intensity,
Yeah.
um, and that's geared towards these outcomes. But then we're also trying to, at some level, emulate what they go through on a day-to-day basis in their natural habitat, in their day-to-day environment. And what's cool about that, when you look at, all right, we're taking a break for, we'll use a corporate team for instance here, we're taking a break from Q3 or the start of Q4 or whatever it might be, to do this experience. What's great about, I think, doing some sort of like off-site or contracted team building event, whether it's with us or somebody else, is the risk of like hitting numbers, hitting goals, maintaining a level of customer service or quality assurance, whatever your industry is. It's kind of paused for that moment when they're out of the office or out of the warehouse or whatever it might be. And if we can effectively emulate or simulate what their day-to-day environment is like, they're having an opportunity to look at like, oh, there's conflict between Zach and I here, and we're seeing it in our day-to-day as well. Maybe it's not a debilitating situation, but it's one of those like uncomfortable, whatever.
Yeah.
This is the time to solve it because there's not really any real world risk involved. Like, you're not going to lose a client. You're not going to, ruin your workplace's streak of safe days without incident or whatever it might be. So
You're not getting fired or cut from the team,
yeah. Like in a sports team, like they're not going to lose a game during one of our programs, but if they can confront that challenge, whatever it might be, they have a shot to avoid losing that game or one of those games during their season when the season begins. So,
Yeah, a good example of that is I just worked with a team that had individual star
yep,
athletes, and like they were incredible players individually, and they were brought all over the state to come together and form this one major team. And what do you think the problem's going to have there? They're all going to try to be the star. They're all going to try to show what they've got individually when it's a team sport, and the only way to get the ball in the goal is to work together. And as
yep,
generic as that is, it's not easy.
yep,
You're talking about like I've been the best since I was 5 years old at, let's say, lacrosse or field hockey, and I've only been used to being the dominant person in my team all the way up until this level. Now every person has had that experience. So you try to facilitate an activity where you want to see who comes out as the leader, or you want to be, we could talk about it again, a passive leader, and that's still leadership.
yep, yep. No, that's great, and it's funny when, I guess not funny, but it's always like an aha moment when we get to see participants have that realization of that, like, hey, what we're doing physically right now doesn't mean a single thing towards whatever
Right.
sport we're playing or whatever our office does for work or whatever we're doing, like whatever school project that we're doing, but kind of how we work internally and then with the people around us through these fake challenges will
Mhm.
help us be better prepared to overcome the real ones when they pop up, which is pretty
Yeah.
cool.
And going off that just a little bit is it's really, really interesting to see from a facilitator who's experienced, all these hundreds of programs where you see like some teams come together so quickly and they can get the ball in the bucket or they can finish the puzzle in half the time or less than teams that are athletic, teams that are quicker on their feet, teams that are just gifted athletes, and they're not even coming close to our little ninth grade group that just kills it just because they could just let go of their own personal vendetta to win and just work as a team, and they could just crush it. So that dynamic is completely different depending on who's playing.
Yep, which is pretty cool. Like the idea of letting go of like personal accolades for the
Yep.
benefit of we, which is something that we really try to promote through all of our programming. Um, I'll fully admit it. I don't think I've spent a lick of time in my own personal professional career in the corporate world.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to Empower, was in education. I was a high school, middle school teacher. Um, from your experience, and I know it's been a little bit of time, um, what were some of the common without getting into too much detail, what were some of the common challenges that you faced in your corporate world experience, whether it was you internally or managing a team of people? And if hindsight is 2020, like what would you have liked to see? Like if you were to say, hey, here was this situation, I would have really loved to have some sort of experience. Like what would you have hoped as a team manager? What would you have hoped to maybe get out of an experience for your
Oh,
team?
I,
Yeah.
I got to answer lining up for you. So,
This
uh,
was not rehearsed or practice either.
I
I
know,
just saw
yeah.
the
This
he
is
just
what I'm here
popped.
for. So I used to manage a gym. So I was the GM for a couple of gyms, and within the gym, without going into specifics, there's always different departments in the gym. And there's a sales department, there's a front desk department, there's a PT department, and then there's a manager department, but we won't talk about that one. So sales, PT, or physical therapists or trainers, and then front desk, and they didn't know each other for crap. It was their own little world here, little world here, little world here, and guess who blamed when things didn't go well that day, that week, that month, that quarter? They blamed the other department, and they're like, oh, I'm not getting these clients because of this team or this person on this department, or I'm not getting in front of enough people because sales aren't bringing the people in, or sales aren't getting enough commission because it became such a war between the departments. So one of my jobs was like I was like the traveling GM. I would go into a building and take over, see what's going on, and try to fix it. And that was always, no matter what issues that the company was having, that was always a problem, that the departments were separated. And I don't think it was a perfect solution, but what I loved to do was kind of have each other do each other's jobs. And not in the sense of I'm going to take your job, but at least come and observe what I do for a day, or come and sit down next to a desk and witness these phone calls, or come at the front desk and greet clients or customers that are coming in, the 500, 1,000 that would come in a day, and like see what I go through. And it showed the challenges that each other were going through during that time.
Yep.
It goes as far as so I said there's a managing team. So the managing team will have a sales meeting every week, or a sales meeting every day, and then the front desk manager will have a front desk meeting, and so they have different meetings, which is great. I required it. It needs to happen, but I infiltrated in, like, we're having um, total all group team meeting. Everyone. I want every department there at least once a month, just so we can hash out what's going on and what needs to be done without doing this and just pointing
Yep.
fingers at each other.
Yep.
But yes, on the nitty gritty, do each other's roles for a day, and it just got that level of respect. Like, oh, this sucks. I'm so glad I'm a personal trainer and not the front desk. And the front desk people are like, you know what? I couldn't talk to one person for that long or try to train them for that long. I respect what they're doing. Then sales is like, how many cold calls do you make a day? I can't make what. So like, they, even if it's not a perfect solution, they understood what each other did, because they got hired at one role. They do that one role for years, and they never really knew what goes on the other sides. So having them experience that was always a plus.
Yep. And that's and again, kind of some common sense stuff here, but like the better the understanding of the different roles, the greater the appreciation.
Yep.
And when there's appreciation, it might be, hey, Zach, I'm in a different role or different department, but what can we do to help you facilitate things along in your department, and vice versa? And it starts to break down some of those walls that can develop, and really create true collaboration, not just within a bucket of people, but between all of those different silos or whatever buzzwords you want to throw out there.
Yep.
And it's cool that you mentioned that, because that's something we've done and will continue to do in our programming. I'll take the phone, the other end of the phone. If you were the client who's saying, "Hey, I have this issue with some beef between these 3 or 4 different departments," okay, well, how do we simulate that type of setting in a low risk environment with hopes that the participants learn something, experience something that'll then help them be better equipped to handle it in the real world, or in their day to day environment. We can look at an activity where the matrix, for instance, is an activity where people have to build Lego structures. Once
Yeah.
again, it sounds very simple. But in that activity, the goal is to build two different structures that are a match to one another without seeing what the other structure is.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is to perform, to split our group up and have them perform these three very different roles that have very different responsibilities and very different rules that they need to play by.
Mhm.
And in certain instances, I've seen participants be like, "Who cares about what they're doing? Let's just get our part done as quickly as possible." And that usually turns out into a dysfunctional Lego house.
Mhm.
But then we've also seen other roles that are super intentional about, or other individuals or groups that are really intentional about, hey, how do we do this role to the best of our ability for our own accountability and task completion, but also to set the people up, whoever we're passing the baton to set them up for success when they have to take over. And
Yeah.
that's,
And
um,
not only do we see that on literally every program that we do, but on a micro version, we take people and tell them to get yourselves in groups. And what happens immediately, whether it's department or whether it's their part on the field or if their best friend, boom, they get sucked into the people that they're comfortable with. And I think a good way of putting it is get comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's life. That
yep,
that's just what you're going to experience in life. And the more you do it, the more uncomfortable you get, the less uncomfortable you're going to be in situations like that. So having to force people to work with each other and to get this little task with Legos done with people that they don't normally work with is such a blessing, because they're going to use that everywhere else.
yep. And then they're going to have this tangible physical experience,
Hmm.
albeit trying to build these matching Lego houses, that they can then say, hey, these actions led to successful completion. These actions made it a little bit more challenging for us to get from start to finish in the initiative. How do we maintain the pluses and improve upon the minuses, tomorrow when we get back to the office? And that's what I think is so cool about it. Like, the fact of the matter is, if your Lego house sucks at the end or you don't get a match, it's, again, no one's winning a cash prize for having the best Lego house match. But so there's not really this risk involved in the activity, but the reward is great, right? The reward of potentially being better suited to navigate those challenges down the road is invaluable.
Yep. I mean, that's the big. I mean, our thing is bleh, can mumble, is takeaway. Like, what are we
Yep.
taking away from this Empower program? And it's not money, it's not a trophy. It's what you're going to use as a tool back on the field, back at school, back at corporate.
Yep, 100%. So, we'll tie up this little section of the episode here, but if you are someone who's interested in doing team building, right? So whether it's your students, your athletes, college leadership group that you oversee, corporate office, whatever it might be, make sure to, if the question isn't asked about who your group is, what they do, what are some of their high points, what are some of their challenges, and what you want to get out of the experience, if that question is not asked in the sales process, whatever you want to call it, bring that information up. And if you feel like you're in a situation where there's a good chance of like square peg in the round hole, meaning like force feeding somebody, like here's our stock team building experience, take it or leave it, that's one that I would probably avoid.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I know there's a ton of great practitioners out there, beyond our team, that really is going to kind of take that approach of, let's figure out who the group is, what they want, and their desired level of like participation before we just cram something down their throat because it's easy for us or it's convenient for us. So if you're in that spot, make sure that information is discussed, because that is the absolutely most necessary first step towards having an experience that's in alignment with who, meet them where they're at, who your group is, what they need, or what you want for them. So,
Yep.
um, Good talk right there. And as promised, little activity introduction or a little takeaway. I'm going to go with a simple one here: art forgery.
Yep.
All right. So art forgery is somewhat in vain to the matrix activity, and it's an activity that is very easy to modify, make easier, very easy to extend, make more challenging, and can be kind of facilitated up or down depending on the different group type that we're working with.
I'll add,
Yeah.
it's also easy to create. You could do this with supplies probably at your job or at school.
100%, and that's why we picked. That's why the art forgery was the activity of choice for today's episode. Because what I love about this activity, you don't need any special supplies. Like Zach said, like you can open up your desk drawer, you probably got what you need to run it. If you're a teacher, your students' supplies, their crayons, markers, whatever, you probably have what you need to run it. So, to frame it out real quick, art forgery. General principle behind the activity: there's some sort of provided image. We like to use those little pop-up signs that we set up on tables at like conferences or when we're a vendor at some sort of event. We set up this pop-up sign, and we'll explain to the group. And I like to have a little fun with this one. This is like probably my only activity where I like to do a little storytelling.
Yep.
I'm not really good at it, but but it's like this whole premise of like over here is this very rare, priceless, one of a kind piece of art, which technically it is. It's a photo from one of our past programs that no one else has.
Yeah.
But the mission for the group is to create the best possible forgery fake of this rare, priceless, extremely expensive piece of Empower Museum art. And the way participants go about doing that is there are 2 roles that need to be played during the team. So role number 1 is the communicator. During the activity block, which typically this activity runs anywhere from like 20 to 40 minutes, depending on how complex the image that you're using is. About 20 to 30 minutes, communicators can go back and forth and look at the art as many times as needed during the activity. Every time they go up there, they then go back to their partner, who is the quote unquote forger. Now, the forger doesn't get to look at the art because you don't want to get caught, right? The forger is holed up in some remote basement somewhere way far away from this museum. The communicator's the one breaking in, doing the dirty work. Forger just has to get the information and create the replica. So in using our little call here, Zach might be the forger. I'll go look at the image and explain to Zach, like, hey, in the top right corner is the sun and a couple clouds, and we kind of repeat that process until we feel like either time runs out or we feel like we have the best possible forgery that can be sold on the black market. Mm-hmm. What's cool about that activity, a couple things. One, in its most global terms, you're looking at how to effectively communicate. If I say, Zach, put a sun on your paper, there's a very high chance that the sun is not going to be in the right spot. Right. So get in participants to really think about what is effective communication truly. 2, it brings up this idea of the communicator advocating for themselves. So like if I explain, hey, Zach, you're going to draw this, this, and this, and you're going to put them here, here, and here, and Zach's looking at me wide-eyed, encouraging Zach to be like, I don't understand what you're telling me. Can we break it down maybe into smaller parts? So this idea of advocating for yourself when you don't know or you're not 100% certain as to what's going on. And then it also gets into helping participants gain a better understanding of where their strengths and weaknesses lie. It's funny in that activity. I don't know if this experience is the same for you, but about 99% of the time, I'm not good at drawing.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. And we're like, listen, we're not hanging this up on a Route 9 billboard.
Yeah.
So it's less about are you good at drawing and like can you take in information and execute.
Right. And of course, it's never about the drawing. And
Yeah.
any of our activities, it's not about the ball tossing. It's not about anything like that. That's not why we're doing it. And I'd say 90% of the time, I have a lot of people ask, "Can we switch roles?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
um,
we're 10 minutes in, you've got pen to paper, and now you want to switch roles. Essentially, you want to go see the painting and or the piece of art. And the other things like, you know what, I picked the wrong role, but we use that as facilitating or as a facilitator of when people say that, like, okay, but why do you think you have the wrong
yeah.
wrong role? There we go, wrong
That's a
role.
mouthful. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So why do you think that? And we can talk through how we can successfully complete the task, even if you think you're in the wrong place.
Yep, 100%. And I think what I like about that activity as well, like again, two simple roles. One looks and explains,
Mm-hmm.
one hears and executes. Um, so it makes it pretty simple for younger participants to be able to play to strengths. Like, yes, I'm someone that's really good at looking and explaining. Okay, cool. You should be a communicator. I'm someone that's really good at listening and doing. Awesome. You're the forger. Um, what's cool about that activity as well for adult or higher level, like, some, maybe college leadership or a high school leadership group, you can also facilitate it so that kind of to simulate what you discussed earlier about the different roles in the gym setting. Yes, on a day-to-day basis, I'm really good at looking and explaining, and Zach is really good at listening and doing. Let's reverse roles.
Let's try it. Yeah.
Let's put the shoe on the other foot, right? Like, what's to lose?
Right.
What's to lose? And all that does is it helps both parties gain a much greater understanding of and appreciation for, like, wow, I always complain about Zach and him not being able to do X, Y, but man, this job is difficult. Maybe when I'm communicating to Zach next time, I need to do things a little differently.
Yep.
And vice versa. So Art Forgery provides some sort of rare piece of art. It could be a poster, it could be the cover of a book or a magazine, could be some sort of like pop-up sign that you have handy, it could be something relevant to what you do for work or what content you're covering in your classroom, could be relevant to the sport that you play or coach or teach, whatever it might be. And then you have two roles to complete the task, which is to draw the best forgery of the original piece of art.
Mm-hmm.
Those two roles are communicators, can look, can explain, cannot draw. And then your forgers, who can listen, ask questions, and then try to draw, but they don't get to see the original image until the activity is over, which is always makes for a fun reveal too. Like at the end of the activity, you got like 10 teams finishing up their drawing, and then you turn it around and it's just like this. Yeah, it's a combination of like a hush and laughing at the same time, like over the group. They're like, oh.
Yep. And it's cool to see the groups that, not won but did really well with it. They see it, they're like, yeah, you know what? Ours looks pretty dang similar to that. And then you have other groups that are like, oh, we didn't do this right.
But you're gonna go home and hang that on the fridge?
Right? Yeah. Nope.
And then just in closing, it's like what's really cool about that activity is it's super flexible as far as like the organization of it. So what I just described would be all the participants working in pairs, one communicator, one person drawing. Pretty linear, clean line of communication. We've done versions of this when instead of being in teams of two, we'll have them in teams of four. So there's two communicator forger pairs, and then we can either say like, hey, both of you have to draw the image, and whatever one you think is best is the one you'll present at the end. Or we'll say, hey, Zach, you and your partner, you're going to be responsible for the top half of the image. Dan and his partner, they're going to be responsible for the bottom half of the image. And then at the end, you'll put that together. And then you could do that same principle with groups of 6 or groups of 8. Mm-hmm. Group of 6, each pair is responsible for a third of the image. And then for a group of 8, each pair is responsible for a quarter of the image. And then if you want to look at, a higher level like corporate setting, what's cool about, say we are in a group of 8 and there's 4 communicators and 4 forgers, not only does it require this element of effective communication between each of the pairs, Zach is the forger and myself as the communicator, But then it requires this collaboration between the 4 communicators. How am I going to know where I'm drawing the line to what to explain to Zach, and then the other communicators taking over at, to the left of that line? So it really kind of ups the level of intensity, I guess, with regards to role performance, communication, and effective planning and execution of the plan, which is a pretty cool version of that activity, having the multiple pairs going at once.
One of the things that I learned through Art Forgery 2 is I assumed that the communicator was going to be the one to talk, attention to detail, all this, and that might be true. But a vital role is the forger has to ask the right questions. And I think that if you have obviously both ends have to do 50-50, but if you have a strong forger who listens and understands and then has another question on top of it to be like, okay, tell me exactly, could be anything, where to put on this paper, it comes out a little bit cleaner. And then a communicator gets to learn more about how the forger learns as well.
Yep, 100%. So like that idea of not advocating for yourself, but also advocating for your teammate, right? If you don't understand it, kind of continue to ask these probing questions, and organically your communicator is going to gain a better feel for, all right, this is how Zach wants to receive information. And as a teammate, as a leader, I want to make sure I'm giving that information to him, not in a manner that's convenient to just me, but that's workable and convenient to both of us, which is pretty cool.
Yep.
What's also, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say a little icing on top. If you as the audience is going to try Art Forgery, is to use pen, markers, and crayons. Don't let your people use pen and pencil, because the whole point of being able to draw and erase is not part of the program.
Yep. And great minds think alike there, Zach, because that was one of the things I was going to kind of close off on that activity. The other facilitation point that we find ourselves sneaking in there is like check, double check, triple check, verify before you put Sharpie to paper.
Right.
And can I get another sheet of paper, mister? I'm like, what'd you do? And they're like, scribbled all over, like, oh no.
Yep. You'll see communicators like when the forgery goes down, they're like, no, like, where did it? I'm like, let's talk. That's funny and cute, but like, where did it fall apart? What was it? Was it the forger not asking the question? Was the communicator not being detailed enough? And take it from there.
Yep. So it's a good old lesson of think before do as well.
Exactly.
So, hey, episode 2, Lead with Empower podcast, just about to be in the book. So again, just to recap, if you are someone that's exploring the idea of a team building event, make sure the questions are being asked or answered about who your group is, what their dynamic is, what you want them to have out of the experience, their desired level of physical ability, all that information. Because if someone is not considering that information when they're designing your experience, odds are they're going to miss the mark when it comes to the day of the event. And again, in closing, one of our favorite activities, and it's very fluid and flexible for the variety of group types that we work with, Art Forgery Initiative. All you need is some paper, some sort of image, and some drawing utensils, and some space to draw, and you got a heck of an activity there. Lead with Empower podcast, episode 2. Zach,
boom,
hammered it. Looking forward to the next one. Thanks to everybody for checking us out. Again, leadwithempower.com. Check us out on Instagram. Our handle is @leadwithempower. A lot of great content out there. And appreciate you joining us. Go on and have a day.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Zach.